It has been down to maybe 35 degrees in here. I have them covered at night. I have no heat in my greenhouse. But since my tomato plants were huge when I brought them out of the house this season, they are doing pretty good. I've even got, today is May 4th, and I've got little tomatoes everywhere. The reason for this video is that here are sun sugar, which are one of our favorites, and I am going to show you how to take some clones. Now here's the main stem that goes up here to the top of the tomato, and you never want to cut the top of this tomato off. Right here is the top, but coming right here out of this, here's the main stem. Coming right here is a sucker. Now this is a good size sucker. Usually I don't leave them to be this big, but this year I wanted to make more tomatoes. Here's a small one. I'll just clip that one off. Here's another one. And the purpose of this video is just to show you, now that I've cut this off and I've gone through 1, 2, 3, and I've gotten this many clones out of it, I'll show you how to replant them and get more tomatoes. I cut this off the tomato. What I do is I'll take a few branches off of it to make it easier for the roots to develop. So I'll take some. I still want this to look like a decent tomato plant, so I'm not cutting it all off. Also, here is some little baby tomatoes already growing. I don't want that, but you have to be careful not to take off the main branch, the main stem of the tomato. So I'm just taking this off, and this is ready to clone. Alright, normally, let me show you how to do one. I fill up my pot with dirt. I take off the lower branches, maybe a couple off the edge. I shove it in. Now I will keep this in shade for a couple weeks until it develops roots. And you must keep it watered and in shade. There's no roots to help this plant survive. But since I do not have that much potting soil, I'm going to plant all of them in one pot. Which is a lot of soil right here. Okay. Now I've cut the branches off, and I just carefully shove them in. I don't want to push them in too hard. I strip down the stem and carefully shove this in. Might as well cut this one, I forgot, and this one down here. Don't need that. Okay, this one's ready. Slowly, careful not to hurt the stem. Okay, I've got them all planted in here. I forgot to count them. I don't know how many there are. There's about 10, 15 tomato suckers in here. And I'm going to water them thoroughly. So I'm going to water these thoroughly. And I'm going to put them in my shaded shelf. Now, they'll stay here for a couple weeks, and they will root, and I will have 15 more tomato plants. That's awesome. I love cloning tomatoes. Some other ones that I have on this shelf that I started a few days ago, different varieties. Don't forget to label them. But this is how I clone tomatoes. I keep them in the shade for a couple weeks, and I'll show you what they look like later. Just to make sure this shelf doesn't get any sunlight, I have these old blankets that I use to protect them from the sun. When the 2 weeks are over, I pull them back out into the sunlight, and it might start out just a half hour to a few hours each day until they have grown accustomed to the sun. Also, I keep checking them to see if they have developed roots, and when they do, I transplant them into their individual pots. Then again, when I transfer them into their individual pots, I keep them out of the sun for a couple days. This seems really complicated, but it really isn't. I just have a hard time explaining it. These are some clones at a later stage. I have already bumped them up into a larger pot, and these are ready for me to plant. The way I check for the roots is I take the pot and I flip it upside down in my hand, and I can check how the roots are doing. When cloning, most of the time I'm successful. Out of 15, I might lose 1 or 2. If you clone a 1-year-old tomato plant, the clone will be a year old. It's not a new seedling, so you will get tomatoes a lot sooner. Also, after you sucker your tomato plants, you will get a lot more tomatoes on them. Also, keep the foliage away from the bottom. Less bugs